They are always neatly dressed. They well spoken, and you get the impression that once that guy wants to assist you, that he's this nice guy. He's not a criminal. You don't see him as a criminal.
They actually wait until somebody vulnerable comes along who makes a mistake or who trusts them, and then they defraud that particular person of their money. And sometimes it's the person's last bit of cash they've got for the month.
We estimated that they made an average of 100,000 Rand in a week. That's how much money they were making.
Cape Town. Thousands of tourists come to the mother city, hoping to have good times. And where there are tourists, money flows. Instant access cash dispensed at ATMs near you. It is open season for the ATM card thief. Michael Manyana and Melissa Mkhwanazi were professional card scammers, known to the police and bank security. The pair preyed on unsuspecting card holders in the Cape for almost a decade with virtual impunity. Detective Ines Wells was a fresh rookie in the fraud section at Cape Town Central when she heard about them.
I joined the fraud unit, and Carlo Mini, who works for Absa Bank in the security division, he contacted me and he said, Wales, please will you help us? I've got video footage of almost a decade of these two people working together, going from ATM to ATM, stealing bank cards, and they don't have a single conviction. Please will you help us?
Like so many card scammers, Michael and Millicent eluded capture. The more they got away with, the more they kept going.
The reason why they were able to get away with this was because of Cape Town's got such an incredibly high tourist population. It's one of the highest in the world for a city. So they go like through all the various suburbs, coming all the way through Claremont and Rondebosch and Woodstock, and going to Cape Town, going through to Hout Bay, going through all the way to Franschhoek, and focusing on the areas where tourists like to go. They had hotspots that they liked to focus on, especially at the Absa Bank ATM at the Pigpal Parkade, and in Sea Point, and also in Voortrekker Road.
In the cash-loaded holiday capital, Michael and Millicent enjoyed rich pickings.
We estimated that they made an average of 100,000 Rand in a week. That's how much money they were making.
More surveillance and bigger security systems did not seem to deter them. Like the other syndicates, they often became more brazen.
What happened after a while was that the syndicates would figure out which ATMs had cameras and which didn't. So we found that they would target the ATMs which didn't have good video cameras. And some of them didn't care. Some of them would still go and use the same ATM over and over again, even though they knew that there were like 5 cameras focused on the ATM.
The fraudster's luck was about to change. On the 9th of February 2012, Detective Wales got a tip-off from bank security that Michael Manyana and Millicent Mkhwanazi were picked out on the live monitor at an ATM in Long Street.
I just got to the station. It was a Saturday morning, and Jacques phoned me. And he said, Wales, we've got Michael and Millicent at the bottom of Long Street near Absa. And there was another guy with him. And he said, can you come? And I was like, yes, I'll be there now. And as I drove from the station to there, he phoned again. He said, please hurry, they're busy getting difficult.
But, as Detective Wells recalls, it wasn't easy to arrest Millicent.
A woman can only search a woman, so I had to search Millicent. And as I was searching and trying to put her handcuffs on, she started scratching me, and she was like digging her nails into me. I was like, and she hid her cell phone. She had a cell phone and she hid it on her person, and she was so difficult straight from the start. We arrested them. We took them to the cells, and that was the 9th of February 2012.
It would be nearly 5 years before Michael Manyana and Millicent Mkhwanazi faced a magistrate for charges related to fraud, theft and racketeering and contravening the Electronic Communications Act. They were detained at Pollsmoor Prison awaiting trial. During that time, bail was repeatedly denied.
The case was handled in the Khayelitsha Regional Court, which is the priority court, and that's where it went to trial.
They faced numerous charges, including stealing 1,000 rand from a pensioner, cleaning out the entire contents of over 24,000 rand from a foreign student's bank account, and taking 20,000 rand from a disabled woman's bank account. Both accused pleaded not guilty and strenuously denied the charges. Manyana insisted the card thief seen clearly in the security videos was not him. In December 2016, nearly 5 years after their arrest, Michael Manyana and Millicent Mkhwanazi were jointly sentenced to more than 100 years in jail. Such harsh sentences for theft were unheard of in South Africa, and many asked, how did this come about? On the 14th of December 2016, Michael Manyana was sentenced to 53 years imprisonment on charges of fraud, racketeering, theft, and various counts of contravening the Electronic Communications and Transactions Act in the Khayelitsha Priority Court. His partner in crime, Millicent Mkhwanazi, was handed a 50-year sentence. The sentences were unprecedented and presented a watershed in the way card fraud was viewed in the justice system.
In the previous cases, in the magistrate court, we just have charges of fraud or theft of bank card, those kind of charges. But in the regional courts, it was a racketeering, which just shows that it's organized, it's a syndicate, there's large amounts involved. So it's a more serious charge for which you can get more serious sentence.
Manyana and Mkhwanazi were tried under the Prevention of Organised Crime Act, POCA, which hands out severe sentences of up to life imprisonment.
It's a milestone and an important one for us because at the very least it sends a warning out to other suspected fraudsters and people that are perpetrating these crimes that it is serious and we'll take it seriously when found and when we're able to catch it.
Getting cases to court was no easy task. It was hard enough finding victims who were willing or able to testify in court.
What was hard was that there were sometimes so many cases to deal with that if you didn't get hold of the tourist fast enough and get their email address and also get their bank card number and to be able to get the footage in time, the footage would expire and would get taped over and the tourists would leave the country and you'd struggle to trace them. You wouldn't be able to get hold of them. You wouldn't have a number. You'd contact the hotel and try and trace them, and it would be just because of sometimes you were just overwhelmed by the amount of cases while you're handling all these other cases, opposing bail and that kind of thing. That it was just, there were some cases that actually just basically slipped through the cracks because I couldn't manage to investigate all of them.
Even if the cops apprehended them, the robbers felt they had a good chance of being let off.
The syndicates were so tame that they didn't really care if they got arrested because they knew that if, the case would probably just be withdrawn. That was the pattern that they were used to.
This laxity suited the criminals down to the ground.
The card swipers, as we call them, they are dressed in the most expensive clothing that you can buy in South Africa. They made so much money, so they dressed like professionals. They looked like, businessmen. They've got beautiful leather shoes on and expensive designer clothing, and they smell nice, and they're keen. And I remember when I took their fingerprints, the men's nails were often better than mine. They'd have these manicures. The men had nails were polished.
The card thieves were also audacious.
We had an incident several years ago where we arrested a guy in the morning The next day, he was at the ATM again. And when we arrested him again, because we were doing the operation the next day, and asked him, what are you doing here? He said he needed the money because he had to make the money back that he had paid for his bail.
When I'd interview them, they would say, like, why are you bothering with this? They're just tourists. They're rich tourists. You know, why are you actually bothering with this? We're not hurting anyone.
But Detective Wales knew that theft not only hurts the victims, it damages the country.
They're not going to boost the South African economy with that money. It was just blown. It's not even that they took the money and said, oh, here, we built a school with it or something like that. It wasn't even a Robin Hood kind of story. It was just selfish indulgence, greed.
What frustrated Detective Wales was that while the criminals seemed to be winning, the victims were losing not just their hard-earned money, they were losing faith in the justice system.
The other thing that really bothered me was that then when I would now meet with a tourist and say, okay, I'm Detective Wales and I've come to interview you and I'm sorry this happened to you, and I need your card number, because I need, from that card number, I can trace with the bank teams that I worked with where your card was used. So now we can go, we know where the card was stolen, now we can go to those ATMs and see if there's footage where they withdrew that money. And then the tourist, I remember so distinctly, like the tourist then would look at me like with this distrust, like, you want our cards, you also want to steal our money, you know, and that really upset me, because they're in Cape Town and they were having an amazing time and they're on honeymoon, whatever the story is, and then they had this horrible incident where their trust was broken.
Detective Wales was determined to bring the criminals to justice, and that meant partnering with state prosecutors to build a watertight case.
One prosecutor, Mr. Guza, a senior prosecutor, he'd always see me walking around with like a stack or like a box of dockets, and I'd be carrying this like massive pile of dockets. And then he basically said, like, what's going on? I said, no, well, these cases are all against the same group of people. And so what I did is when I arrested someone, I'd look at the history, and everywhere they'd been arrested before, I'd go to those stations and I'd get that docket from the archive and I'd reopen it. And mainly it was in court to oppose bail, to show a propensity, to show a pattern, to show this isn't the first time this person's done this. Like, they've done it so many times, and also to explain why the previous cases had been withdrawn. So Mr. Guza at court said, hold on, this isn't just theft and fraud, this is racketeering. This looks like racketeering, which involves organized crime over an extended period with a syndicate involved. And he referred me to the DPP.
Detective Wales then met with Advocate Blaine Lazarus from the Director of Public Prosecutions in the Western Cape. Amongst many cases awaiting prosecution, she was intent on catching the big fish, Manyana and Mkwanazi.
He really listened, and at the end of it he said, okay, and he gave me these instructions. Now this is what I want you to do. And he said, these cases where you don't know where the complainant is, where they've immigrated and you can't get hold of them again, try your best in the next 2 weeks to try and get hold of them. You know, use whatever tools you can. And if you can't get hold of them, we're not using those cases. We put them aside. And he said, okay, these cases, where's the video footage for this case? Where's the evidence in that case? And I explained, okay, that can't be found and that's gone missing. Put it aside. So out of this massive box of cases that I had against these two suspects, he narrowed them down to about 7 dockets. And he said, we're not wasting our time with the weak cases, we focus on the strong cases.
And that is exactly what Detective Wales did. She focused on amassing enough charges to put the thieves behind bars.
ATM fraud is probably one of the most prevalent types of crime that we find out there, specifically opportunistic crime. It happens daily, it happens across the country, and this is also the type of fraud where the syndicates don't choose the victims ahead of time. They actually wait until somebody vulnerable comes along who makes a mistake or who trusts them, and then they defraud that particular person of their money. And sometimes it's the person's last bit of cash they've got for the month.
The criminals were smooth operators.
How it happened was that the syndicates would rent a vehicle. They wouldn't use their own vehicle. They'd rent a vehicle and would usually be in their girlfriend's name, someone that's not in the vehicle. And then what happens is that they stop at the ATM, and then they double park outside, and then they go and they approach people at the ATM.
The modus operandi is that what they'll do is they'll lure you into trusting them. So he will set up the ATM in such a way that he will leave a slip, a transaction slip in the machine, or he'll leave his card in the machine, or a wallet or a cell phone or something like that. You arrive and you see it and you turn around and you take the slip and you say, this is your slip. Now, in doing that, you've started the conversation. So when he says to you, or she says to you, there's a problem with the machine, you need to push your card in at an angle, you trust them because you started the conversation. They didn't. And he just now looks like a friendly person who's helping you, assisting you at the ATM because they've had the same problem.
The best thing about them is they are always neatly dressed. They well spoken, and you get the impression once that guy wants to assist you that he's this nice guy. He's not a criminal. You don't see him as a criminal. And then the latest thing now is they also act as security guards.
It'll go along like there's a problem with the machine, push the card in at an angle. They often now use the cashless transaction button. So in pushing that, what it normally does is it closes the card reader. So when you try and push your card into the machine, it won't go in. Now, so now you've got to push it in an angle. I've just had the same problem. And when they do that, he's got the money in his hand, he hides the card under the money, you think the card is in the machine, and he'll say, enter your PIN. And if it's a cashless transaction, it'll say, enter your cell phone number or your number that was sent to you via SMS. So you enter the number, he looks over your shoulder, we call it shoulder surfing, and he's got both things. He's got your card and he's got your PIN. And that's as simple as it is on a card swap. On a card skimming, all they do is they put it through a handheld device and he gives it back to you, you put it into the machine and he watches the PIN that way.
Dennis Pillay was one of hundreds of card holders scanned at an ATM. He came after business hours on a Friday to draw money for his workers.
When I got to the ATM, there was two guys at this particular machine and a lady at that machine. And there was a lady like pretending to be behind me in the queue. Then when I put my card in, punched my PIN in, and the card just didn't reappear. But in that time, one of the guys came and said, oh, but this is a touch screen. And in that time, I'm sure he must have taken the card. But that all happened within a matter of, say, 2 minutes. And in that time, I immediately called the number that you see here on the panel, and I reported the card missing. And within a minute, my phone went off, and there was 2,000 rand off out of the account. And it wasn't even a minute later, another 2,000 rand disappeared.
Dennis Pillay was lucky. He reported the theft immediately and got his money back within 10 working days. Others have not been so lucky. They lost money and never got it back. The simple answer is, don't trust anyone, even if they look trustworthy.
I think the most important, if a person wants to assist you or is friendly with you, don't think that he's well dressed. Just rather press the cancel button, take your card and leave. Go to the next bank and do the transaction in that area.
The fraudsters are slick and quick. They work one ATM and move to another. Securing a successful conviction requires teamwork, connecting the dots, detecting the thieves and catching them, linking together all the incidents they have been involved in.
We find more success because we go into partnerships with SAPS, with the National Prosecuting Authority, with our service providers. If it wasn't for all of these parties working together, we wouldn't be able to actually catch as many people as we do. So as much as there are syndicates who go out and try and find their victims in this way, we are trying to ensure that as many parties as possible are watching out and trying to catch them.
We've got live monitoring, which we do at all the ATMs we monitor. So there's about 1,700 that we are currently mandated to do. And we watch those live. We identify the crimes through body language, open it up. We've developed a program that we then use to correlate everything. And then in the background, we've got people who analyze each of the video clips. So they'll go along and analyze it. If they identify or they recognize the person, it's automatically linked into their profile. So when we do arrest someone, we've got in the background, we've got him linked or her linked to so many other incidents. And we then build that together and hand it over to the police.
In the case of Michael Manyana and Millicent Mkwanazi, accurate surveillance footage was vital to detecting and recording multiple incidents.
Footage was good, and I think what also helps is that you could show the pattern, you could show the modus operandi, you could show this is what they do. You know, this isn't, and you could see them both together on the footage operating together. So there was no doubt. We didn't need eyewitnesses, we had footage.
But prevention is better than cure.
Part of the message where we ask customers not to be afraid to report it, whether they're feeling shy or whether they sort of, unsure of what the outcome is going to be, is that they need to report it. Every single case for every single bank gets reviewed on merit. And there are times when we can assist the customer. There are times when we can even stop certain funds from leaving that client's account if it's reported in time. I think there the message becomes, don't wait long. The minute something happens, report it. Your bank will be able to assist you much quicker if you do that.
And at least these two people aren't stealing pensioners' bank cards anymore and emptying their bank accounts, and tourists who might be investing in the country. And they won't be doing it for a very long time.